Ray Davis out at Kentucky via very many different places. He is a much older prospect. He's 24 years old. I was reading today he's 4.5 years older than Braylon Allen, which sounds absolutely wild. 5'10", 216 pounds. Are you a guy that's buying into? It feels like there are a lot of Ray Davis stands at the moment.
I'd probably class myself as a fan. Yeah, I think I like the fact that he has shown he can do it all in college football. I mean, he's had enough opportunities, as you mentioned, with the amount of college teams that he's played on. But I like the fact that we have got that little bit of receiving where it might be a little bit like Vidal, where it's maybe a little bit more check downs rather than actually running routes. But I think he does have the ability when he does transfer to NFL that he can be using the receiving game. But I think his bread and butter is going to be running the ball between the tackles, and he's shown that he can be highly efficient when running the ball. He can show that he can handle a good weight load as well. Again, a really tough runner, short in stature at 5'8", but 211 pounds, and really uses that weight well. Got that low center of gravity, which makes him tough for defenders to bring down. And I think the fact that we mentioned that he has bounced around a little bit in college and played for 3 different teams, that could be seen as a little bit of a positive because he's shown that he can play in different schemes and different offenses and still produce pretty good numbers in college. So that's something that, while it's obviously meant that he's a little bit older as a prospect, at least we've seen that he can play in different schemes in college football. So something where we'll be too reliant on what landing spot he ends up at. Obviously, there's going to be offenses that we would prefer him to land on, but I think he's shown that he can work behind different schemes. So that's great coming into the NFL. And again, you mentioned about the transfer in. It's actually quite good because he could have entered last year. And I think if he did come in last year, I don't think he would have got the same amount of buzz as what he's going to get this year because he had that breakout year last year. Did well at Vanderbilt in 2022, but again in Kentucky, going over to Kentucky and again putting up really good numbers at the touchdowns as well. I think it's just added a little bit more to his game and made us look a little bit more at Ray Davis after what he did at Kentucky. So, again, I'm quite excited by him. You mentioned the age. He's kind of already getting to that age where we start to worry about running backs in fantasy. So we might not have a huge amount of time to have him on his rosters before we start to panic and think we need to move off him. But I think, again, he could be great value in your rookie drafts. As you mentioned, Rich, with these running backs, I think because it is such a confusing running back class where we don't really know who the top guys are. He's a guy that you could probably get in the late second, early third round, depending on where he lands and what draft capital he gets. And you could potentially be getting one of the top running backs in the class. So again, definitely somebody I'm looking at later on in my rookie drafts.
Yeah, I think Davis, for me, he feels like a safe, solid option, but probably lacks that elite upside that maybe I'd be chasing. I think, he's one of those backs that gets what's blocked. He has fantastic technique. He runs well behind his pads. He runs, with a low center of gravity. I think he has phenomenal vision, not necessarily just picking, the obvious lane where the play's blocked, but if there's cutback opportunities, he spots them 9 times out of 10. He just doesn't have that one thing that he does phenomenally well that I'm like, yes, that's what he's going to do at the next level. I think he's like a good, solid jack of all trades, but master of none. I think he's not an elite athlete. He's not an elite receiving back. I think we saw him over the last year at Vanderbilt. Certainly, the 2 games I watched of him at Vanderbilt, he was, I wouldn't say used as a receiving weapon, but he was at least getting out in the open field and being used a little bit more downfield than perhaps he has this last year at Kentucky. But I just don't know if he's elite at one thing that's going to say, right, that's going to get you on the field in the NFL. And I think that he could end up being one of those, solid backup players that, yeah, if he gets a chance and there's, 3 injuries in a running back room and he's going to get 20 carries because there's nobody else on the roster, he could have a fantastic fantasy week. But I don't know if he's going to be good enough to carve out a role let's say at the beginning of the season when everybody's healthy as such. So yeah, I get it. I think he's a safe, solid option, but for me, I'd perhaps rather chase the lottery ticket with some of these later round picks, like a Vidal, who I think's got that, potential that he could blow up. Whereas I feel like Davis, maybe it is slightly to do with his age as well. It's like, what's the best that could happen? And I feel like the best that can happen is like a 1B back in a committee, and I'd rather chase for something a bit higher than that.